Hello, lovely people. Welcome back. We are in season 2, week 14. Had to think about that. And obviously last week we talked a lot about mountains. So I wanted to talk this week about valleys, right? And I feel like that only makes sense because you don't get mountains without valleys. Not really. Valleys are always going to be depressed areas of land that are in between mountains or hills. So if you have that, like, literal geographical understanding, it makes a lot of sense of what valleys are going to be in our lives, which are obviously lower points. They're not pit points. They're not desert points. They're not times where there's no life. It's not those times, because actually valleys are very often cultivated, producing rich areas of land, right? So like the Fertile Crescent is like a fertile valley, right, in between two rivers. So you can have things that are producing or productive in that low point. It's not like when you are, in the metaphorical desert and there's no life anywhere, right? They're dead, dry bones in the desert. It's not that. It's also not being in that pit that I've talked about. I don't think I've talked about it here actually, but I have talked about it on maybe Instagram, where we get into that pit of life and it's that sort of eternal winter that we cannot get out of, right? That's its own story for another day, but valleys are not those things. Valleys are lower, depressed points nestled in between hills or mountains. And there is a sort of like all archetypal symbols, and mountains and valleys are both archetypal symbols, there is a masculine and a feminine component. And mountains and valleys function together. So the mountain is going to be the masculine and the valley is going to be the feminine. And this should not be surprising to us, because the masculine is this sort of protruding, pointed, sort of aggressor out of the earth, right? That's very masculine energy stuff. And then the feminine is this life-giving, receiving, soft, basin. There's a word I'm looking for. Basin that is at the base of the mountain. So you do very much get that masculine, feminine feeling, energy, symbolism that comes from mountains and valleys, which are archetypal symbols. Remember, archetypal symbols are symbols that have been around way longer than literature. It's like numbers. Probably they were discovered, not created. Like language, probably discovered, not created. Our terrain of the world, discovered, not created, right? And of course, like the elements, discovered, not created. So when we're thinking about valleys, what's really important to remember is that they are productive, though low points. So you can really get a lot out of a valley. And like, if you've ever seen a sort of a heartbeat, it's like up, down, up, down, up, down, right? It's mountains and valleys. Our life is a series of mountains and valleys. And I'm not saying anything new here. This isn't like groundbreaking stuff. Wow, Michelina never heard that before. Hopefully you have heard that before. Actually, ironically enough, that my calendar is flipped for Tuesday, but if you look, it's a mountain. I didn't plan this. It's a mountain. I just looked over. These are the mountains, and then this is the valley area, right? And you can have rivers or greenery in the valley space. So when you are looking at mountains and valleys, my desk calendar that I flip with my Bible verses on it, and it's always going to have nature-y type things. We learn a lot in the low points. Often we learn more in the low points than the high points. Often we learn more when we get back down to the ground than when we're up at the top of the mountain. Because, when we're in the valley space, we're looking up at everything around us like, wow, there's so many opportunities, or wow, I can't believe I was just up there, or wow, I'm really trying to go up there, you know? And the valley space is when we're in the trenches, quite honestly. It's when we are in the decision-making places. It's where we do most of our traveling, you know, in life. And I don't know, have you ever played, I don't know if you can see my switches back here. I'm not a gamer, but I like gaming, specific games, Odyssey type journey games. Sure, nobody's surprised. Ones that have good stories, right? I'm sure nobody's surprised about that. But my favorite always is going to be The Legend of Zelda. I love The Legend of Zelda. And if you've ever played The Legend of Zelda, it has these kind of elemental aspects to it. Specifically, I'm thinking of The Call of the Wild. If you've played The Call of the Wild, there's a lot of terrain in that game. And what you notice when you're playing is that it takes a while to get to the top of the mountain. And you're in the valley for much longer than you're on the mountaintop. And when you get to the mountaintop, there's not a lot to do, right? You get whatever you came for and you go, because you're like, can't stay here. There's nothing up here. The valley is where life is lived. And so we have to get comfortable in the valley space, because that is, we live a lot of our lives in between dreams, you know, in between achievements, in between climbing to the next thing or descending from the last thing. And we aren't very comfortable there a lot of the time. We're not really happy about it. We don't really like that. So why are valleys important, right? Why valleys? And if you're in a valley right now, what can you learn from it, right? So, I mean, I have to say, I've been in a valley. Everybody's been in a valley. Some people may never have been to the mountaintop, but I can assure you everybody's been in the valley. And some people's valley is like the Great Gatsby, which is the Valley of Ashes, right? And there's nothing living there. But more often than not, it's the time where you're kind of transitioning, or you're waiting, or you're trying to figure out what's next, right? We hate those times. Nobody likes that. I don't like that. No one likes those times. They're crusty. The worst. So we have to get comfortable in the valley, which is very hard to do. But there's a lot of good things that come from that time period where we can rest, where we can recalibrate, where we can reassess. The valley is for living. The mountain is for achieving. Does that make sense? The mountain is for disciplining and climbing and staying motivated. That's the mountain journey. The valley is for respite or respite, however you want to say it. It's for relaxing. It's for recovering and recouping and reconsidering and recalibrating. The valley is the time, and we need that in our lives. The valley is the time where we can really reconsider or consider for the first time. It's where we take inventory. It's where we pause. It's where we stop. We hate the valley. We hate the valley, right? I've been in a valley I'm at the end of a big life journey, personally, right? I've been in New Jersey for I just turned 32, but from 0 to 31, for the most part, I've lived in New Jersey. And there's been a lot that New Jersey has given me, right? But the book is closing on Michelina in New Jersey. And I know that. And the new book is opening, the sequel of a whole new creature, right? Like 0 to 29, Michelina's caterpillar years. And then we had about 2-3 years of Michelina's cocoon years. And I know the butterfly years aren't taking place in this state. And I'm not upset about it. I'm not upset about it, to be perfectly honest. But I'm in a place right now where I'm waiting for the next step. So I'm just planning in this valley step because I'm coming off of like a whole journey, over the last 31 years, and it takes time to close it out. So for the last, right now it's been 2 months, and I don't know how much longer it's going to be, where I'm just sitting here waiting before I can pack back up, start the trek, climb up the mountain again, and go on to the next journey. And it's not fun. It is not. Do you know why? I'll tell you why. We need to learn how to surrender in the valley. And that sucks. We don't like to surrender in the valley. I don't like to surrender in the valley. I'll tell you that much. I hate surrendering in the valley because the valley time is a time where you can't really take much action. You can't take physical action, right? All you can do in the valley is take mental action and reconsider and recalibrate and replan, but you can't take physical action. Now, for somebody who is, more masculine energy, perhaps like myself, or for somebody who is an active person, an active doer, a planner, and a prepper, it is hard to sit back in the valley space. It is not fun, it is not easy, and it is not ideal. Can't lie to you. But it is necessary because it is life, right? So if you're in that valley space right now, where so many of us are in that liminal transitional space where we're not achieving anything, we're not accomplishing anything, and we're prepping for the next adventure, whatever that may be. If you're there, I get it, and you have to make peace with the process. Not make peace with the process of climbing, make peace with the process of waiting with positivity. I know. This lesson is as much for me as it is for anybody else because I am struggling in the valley space. I don't particularly care for the valley space. And it's not surprising to me that it's very feminine energy based because I'm not very feminine energy based, to be perfectly honest. I'm very masculine energy based. I like to get things done. I'm an Aries. I like to just get to going, That's not what the valley is for. The valley is not for getting to going. The valley is for getting to staying, relaxing, waiting, wondering perhaps, but waiting, making the plans for the next move. So if you're in a valley space and you are in that place where you are irritable or cranky or, I struggle so much in transition that I completely understand where you are. If you are in that place where you struggle in transition, because you just want to do the next thing. You just want to do what you can. You just want to pack up. You just want to stop the relationship. You just want to, there's no fade out. There's just I'm done next. Done next. But the valley is for ending things well. It's you disembarked on whatever part of that journey it is or it was. It's for beginnings and endings. The mountain is for middles, the climax and the falling action and resolution, the beginning and the ending, like a bell curve, the beginning and endings where the valley is. And so we have to kind of make peace with that. And really look around because the view from the mountaintop is stunning. But a lot of times, the view from the valley is even better. And if we're sitting there in the valley space looking at the mountains oh, I can't wait to climb, we're not sitting in the stillness and appreciating our time in the valley. So what I am going to suggest to you, and also what I'm going to suggest to me, is to just enjoy, which I really have been trying to do. And what does Yoda say? Do or do not. There is no try, right? But I have been working to appreciate this liminal space because I keep saying I want to end this well. I want to end this where it's wrapped up nicely like a nice little bow because I never have. I don't end things well. I burn bridges all the time. If you've seen The Office And if you've seen Andy Bernard quitting Dunder Mifflin in like season 9, spoiler there guys, sorry, you know how I end things. Dumpster fire. I mean, if you know about my history, you know how I left a job I absolutely adored and people I absolutely loved working with. Like a nightmare. And that is literally every ending I've ever had. Like, the problem isn't them. I'm the problem. And it's because I don't do well in the valley space. I don't want to take a downtime. I don't want to take a beat. I don't want to take a pause. I don't want to. I know I don't. And that's not helpful. It's not helpful. It's not realistic. It's not how life works. It is literally just not. It's just not. And so when we make peace, the sooner we make peace with the valley space, the sooner we make peace with the fact that we'll be there. We will be in the valley. We will absolutely spend a good majority of our time in the valley, in the transition, in the endings or the beginnings. Once we make peace with that and we acknowledge it, like so many people don't even talk about it, I guess, you know, really. And to be perfectly honest, like I never really thought about it in these terms until I started like coming up with content to talk about in season 2. When I was like, oh, you know what? I have a problem with the valleys. I don't have a problem with the mountains. And so, as always, I am doing this for you to know yourself. Everything I do is so that you know yourself. You know your authentic self. You know where you struggle and where you don't. I know I struggle with the valleys. I don't struggle with the mountains. Give me a mountain to climb. Don't give me a valley to wait in, you know? And so if you are that person, if you're also struggling in that way, completely get it. But here's what I want to offer you. Take time to identify, right? First off, if you're, you know, good or bad at the valley space. If you're like, yeah, I'm not so great at the valley space, actually. What you can start to do is identify why. What is it that you don't like about the valley space? For me, it's because I feel out of control. I don't like feeling out of control. I don't like feeling like I'm not in charge of my life. But the thing is, like, we're not in charge of our lives. We're in charge of ourselves. It's not the same, you know? So it's about investigating why it is that we don't like the things that we don't like. And how much of it is human nature and how much of it is our, you know, belief systems and how much of it is our learned processes and how much of it is us, right? So in the valley space, identify, hey, yeah, I am good or I'm not good. Because there's going to be some people who are like, I don't have a problem in the valley, but I have a huge problem with the mountain, you know? Which just reminded me of Game of Thrones. If you've seen Game of Thrones and you notice how much they're traveling, there are so many more valleys than there are mountains. Not to mention the character, the mountain, right? But yeah, so identify what it is that you struggle with, first off. And then why you struggle with it. And, you know, obviously, as an authenticity coach, like, I'm here to help you if that's something that you're interested in. Just find me on Instagram and then shoot me a DM. If you're like, hey, so I saw your YouTube and, you know, I really struggle with this and I want to work through it and yada yada, then we could talk about how that would or wouldn't work. But at the end of the day, the valleys are very prevalent in our lives and we really do have to make peace with them. So I hope that this is a helpful diagnostic tool and also informative discussion where you can kind of get a good idea of what's going on. And if you are in the valley space, it is my hope that you, like myself, come under that waiting period and kind of enjoy it and try to be positive about it. I know that's hard to do. And I'm here if you need me. I hope it's helpful. And I will see you next week for week 15. Can't even believe it. Bye, guys.